Hello, everyone. This is JPL, and today I'm joined with.
Jay.
Yes, and we are a podcast name in brackets, and today we're doing something a little different. Um, Jay, would you like to tell us what we're doing here?
Yeah, today we are going to be making a tier list ranking of the films of Steven Spielberg. This is an idea that I had a while back. Last year I did this little project where I was like, "Hey, I haven't seen everything that Steven Spielberg has done. I have some pretty big blind spots there." So I did once per week. I watched a Spielberg movie, and then until I had seen everything, and obviously rewatching the ones that I had already seen, watching for the first time the ones that I hadn't seen. And when I was done with that project, I was like, "Hey, I should turn this into something." Um, so yeah, this has kind of been the long road to John and I doing this. John, you've obviously seen a lot of Spielberg films as well. You haven't seen every single one of them, but you've seen enough that you can kind of help in the creation of this tier list.
Yeah, I've seen most, about 20 some of his films, which they're about 32, 33 ish,
Yeah, yeah.
roughly. So I can help for the most part, but you'll have to carry for the stuff that I've not seen. I would say Spielberg is one of my favorite directors out there. I mean, he's made some of my favorite films, so of
Yeah.
course, of course,
Yeah,
I like his
he's
stuff.
interesting. Do you remember when you first, because presumably I'm assuming this, but I would guess that you had seen Indiana Jones, maybe Jurassic Park, maybe E.T. Were you already aware of Spielberg when you saw that, or did you later become aware that the same person had directed all of those?
So for me, I think my introduction to Spielberg was through Jurassic Park, but I remember very clearly the first time I got into ET and um and Indiana Jones, and I knew from seeing the names and from watching the behind the scenes documentaries, it's like, oh, it's Steven Spielberg, and I knew Steven Spielberg because I, of course, watched a bunch of Star Wars making of documentaries, and he would often appear, being best friends with George Lucas, of course.
Yeah.
Um, so he was a director's name that I very much knew of early on. Um, but before that, it was just Jurassic Park, and maybe Jaws, but mainly
Okay.
just Jurassic Park until I got into ET and Indiana Jones, and then I don't know, somewhere down the line, I looked up his filmography. Who knows? I don't recall. That was elementary school, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, just looking at his filmography, the number of classics and classics in different genres, right?
Hmm.
He in the same kind of thing. And yeah, he is this director. I don't remember when I first became aware of him or his filmography, but I had probably seen at least a few things before I realized that, oh, this is the same guy making all of these movies. Um,
Yeah, I must have been around like 9 or 10 when I first watched ET.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. When did Crystal Skull come out? 09? 07?
Oh, eight, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's yeah, that makes sense. So around that time is where Spielberg as a name became prominent in my memory, I would assume. Because the
Yeah.
Lego Indiana Jones game also came out around that time, and I remember playing the heck out of that. So
Yep. Uh, yeah, it's interesting because he is of the big name directors, he is kind of the biggest name director, but he's very, populist in his tastes, even his more artsy awards type films. Those are still very much playing for bigger audiences. He's made some weird stuff here or there, but
sure.
he's known for his blockbusters. He's known for his crowd pleasers. So you have other big name directors like Martin Scorsese. Scorsese is great. I don't know if Scorsese has the same name recognition. I think Steven Spielberg is kind of just the director.
I mean, Spielberg is a much easier director to get into than Scorsese, because
Yeah.
with the Scorsese, you're getting into like much more darker films about
Yeah.
people with messed up lives. Where Spielberg, a lot of his stuff is like very family friendly. quotation marks, family friendly, depending
Yeah,
on
yeah.
what you're watching.
Depends
Um,
on your
like,
family, yep.
yeah, yeah, easy to get into. Like, there's more of like a widespread audience to have than the more darker uh downfall tale of Scorsese films. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, he is obviously this major figure within Hollywood filmmaking, especially. He is sort of the exemplar of the pillars of achievement that you have there. And it's interesting because he does seem to be the kind of director that he seems very instinctual. He's not thinking through things in like a super, like he seems to just kind of know where to place the camera and how to move the camera, at least to hear him
Mhm.
talk about his creative process. That does come up in some of his films where you're like, oh yeah, this is someone who just knows how to make movies, and making
Sure.
movies is clearly his passion. And yeah, that he has this very long career, lots of great films. Yeah, I'm excited to go through these and
Yeah.
see where we end up with this tier list. Just a little bit before we start, I'm going to go through the rules of this. We are going through Spielberg's films in chronological order, placing them on this tier list. John and I will take turns saying where we will place it first, and then the other person will get a little bit of time to respond. And then we're going to try and convince each other of our placement if there's a disagreement. If no consensus is reached, we're going to flip a coin to figure out where it falls. um, so if, say, you're putting, I don't know, always, you think that's S tier and I think it's F tier, then we'll flip a coin to see where it falls if we can't come to a different agreement. And then we also do have wild cards. So if John and I are having a disagreement and I'm like, no, always really needs to be F tier, then I can play my wild card before the coin is flipped.
Mhm.
And then that'll lock that in to that place.
Can you name out what tiers we have for the audio
Yes.
audience?
Yes. For our audio audience, our tiers are S is the highest tier, then A, B, C, D, and F as the lowest tier.
Yes. For myself, I do not have an F tier. I have placed my not seen films there on my list. So for me, my lowest is a D tier.
Okay.
Um, and anything above D is like they're fine, they're good. So D is
Yeah.
the only one where I'm like I'm not so sure about.
uh, yeah, I do have at least one F tier movie, but mostly, I mean, it's Spielberg. Most of his films work on at least some level.
Yeah, some level.
But yeah, we haven't done this before, so we're just gonna kind of see how this goes. I'll be keeping track of wild cards, obviously, and I don't know. We don't tend to be super contentious or competitive, so we'll
No.
see how copacetic this all goes down. I'm gonna maybe be fighting a little bit for some of my picks here,
I
though.
mean, I really do not care where placements go. I'm just gonna say where I put mine, and like, if you wanna veto anything, yep, sure.
uh,
I
well,
don't
yeah,
think we have anything controversial. I have maybe one guilty pleasure that's higher than you probably would put it, but yeah, no.
yeah. When we get into like the minutia of what I have above other things, that might be a little bit more contentious. But yeah, I think in general, I don't have any really left field picks here.
Mhm, mhm.
But yeah, let's dive into this with starting off. This is we're doing his theatrical films, but the one exception is that we are going to be ranking Duel, which is his feature debut. Um, this is a television film that then has become, because it is very well made. It tends to get roped in with everything else that he did, his theatrical features. So yeah, Duel was written by Richard Matheson based on his own short story, was released November 13, 1971 on ABC, and then later there was an extended version that was put in theaters in Europe, and I believe that's the one that's more commonly available on disc. Um,
Mm,
and
mm.
yeah, it follows the story of a man who, after cutting off an ominous looking tanker truck, finds himself in a deadly chase. This one is very impressive because Spielberg was only 24 when he made it, so very early in his career. John, you have not seen this one, so you
I have
aren't going to
not seen
be
this one. No.
placing
It's
this
on
on
my
the
watch
tier
list.
list.
I wanna
Yeah,
see it. It's just not one that's typically readily available to watch anytime.
Yeah, I actually for my project I got like a box set. I think it's through Universal of a bunch of Spielberg films, so that's how I
Nice.
saw it. But
Mhm.
yeah, I have this ranked. I'm gonna put this in A tier. I think this is a really good debut feature. It's white knuckle tension, great technical work, just a lot of the what Spielberg would become is on display here. And you can tell
Mm.
even at 24 that like he has the goods, the talents to become a great filmmaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, he followed that up with a few different he did a bunch of TV work. He did some episodes. He did an episode of Columbo. He did some pilots, some TV movies, mostly stuff that is um forgotten now. But his theatrical debut was Sugarland Express. This was written by Hal Barwood and Matthew Robbins, loosely inspired by a true story of two criminals who break out of prison and steal a cop car, leading to a chase across Texas as they drive to find their infant son. This was released March 31st, 1974. John, you have seen this one, and you're going to be saying where you want this to fall first.
Yeah, so where I've put this on my list, looking at my list, I put it at C tier. I've only seen it once. I don't have the strongest memory of what my feelings are about the film. Just looking at my letterbox, all I said is, I wonder what the kid feels about this story. Because the words at the beginning of the film is like, oh, something something based on a true story, and I'm like, well, if that's true, what does the kid feel about this film about his parents dying and such? That's got to be a traumatizing thing. I wonder what the kid feels. um it's very Spielberg. There's some great shots in it. um I don't know what else to say. Yeah, it's class. It's yeah.
Yeah, that C tier is a lot lower than I have this. I have this in my A tier. I think this is surprisingly fun with a very emotionally affecting ending.
Mm,
Um, Goldie Hawn, sort of the central performance here, just tons of fun, and it's just this like great low speed chase with like all of these the humor of this, the media sensation that happens. It's just a very interesting and I think well made theatrical debut for Spielberg. um
mm.
can I convince you to bump this up to an A or maybe even a B?
I I mean, I would more closely put it to a B because A is really strong for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
I
S is the best of the best, I limit how much I put into S, so everything is kind of scaled down based on that.
Yeah.
So that's why it's down to a C. I could give it a B.
Okay.
Honestly, you can do whatever you want. I don't care. But
I
it
for in the spirit of competition, I think let's compromise on a B for this one. I'm gonna put a little asterisk next to this in the just right now. It'd be like this is I think this deserves a bit more, but I think we can compromise on a B if you're okay with that.
sure, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, yeah. That next up we have sort of his. I mean, obviously his big breakout, Jaws. This
Mm,
is written by Peter Benchley and Carl Gottlieb, based on the novel by Peter Benchley, released June 20th, 1975. Obviously, people probably know what this is about, but for people who don't, this follows the residents of an island town who find themselves beset by a murderous great white shark. And yeah, this is it was a massive hit. It became the highest grossing film of all time up to that point. This huge breakout for Spielberg, massive boost to his career very early on. Again, this is he's in his what late 20s at this point. So yeah, just a very massive debut for him on a wider stage. And yeah, in that spirit, I put this in S tier for me. I think this is Spielberg's first masterpiece,
mm,
and obviously very troubled production, but everything that went wrong makes it more effective. Um,
sure.
it proves Spielberg's talent at delivering artistically interesting and technically complex films, but ones that resonate with general audiences. He's making this is a blockbuster. This is a crowd pleaser, even though it is also, it has these artistic ambitions. It has this very heavy technical work. And yeah, it's this fusion of Spielberg's talent for action, tension, and human drama. I think it is his best, arguably. There's two that I think deserve that top placement, but I think this is definitely earns its place in the S tier.
Yeah, it's one of the one of his most influential one. This one being the big one named for being the creation of the blockbuster in
Yeah.
general. So huge change to cinema history there. I myself have put it at a high A. Um, it's a great one. The criticisms that I've heard about this one is like, oh, the shark looks fake, but I never really believe that. Like compared to every other Shark Week film, this is like a masterpiece in how it looks. It's great. This one was very well documented, so there's a lot of like documentaries about how everything is made. Go check that out. It's very interesting. Things that you weren't expecting to be a thing or a thing, and that's pretty neat. Film schools really love talking about this film.
Yes.
Yes. uh, so you'll hear all the stories if you take a cinema class. And yeah, no, it's a great classic one. It's Jaws. It's the best one of the Jaws films.
I
Um,
mean, that's at a high bar, but it passes with flying colors.
mhm. Yeah, no, it's a great one. I had other stuff in my mind, but I've lost them, so
Okay.
I can't speak more.
So we have a little bit of a conflict here. I'm gonna try and pull you up into S tier. Can I at least appeal to the cultural importance of this film to be like, you may think it's a high A, but do we bump it up to S tier just for the cultural importance?
You may. I acknowledge that this can be an S tier for its cultural importance.
Okay. So I'll put it at S tier then.
Mhm.
I think very deservingly so, but obviously different opinions here.
Oh,
That's what this is about.
right. This film also led to the mass murder of sharks.
Yes. Yeah. It it inspired, a new fear of sharks that is has had its effects.
Yes. Um. Anyway, moving on.
uh, well, yeah, very different kind of film. Very interesting follow up
Mm.
here. We have Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This is written by Steven Spielberg himself, his first writing solo writing credit. I believe his one of only two solo writing credits. He's not a writer director. Um, but yeah, this was released November 16, 1977, and it is about a man who becomes obsessed with aliens after an encounter with a UFO. John, where do you have this on your list?
Where I have it on my list is a debatable C for me. Um,
Okay.
so the reason why is because I really love the sci-fi and space stuff, and while I was watching this, because I've seen it a couple times before, but for my latest watch through, this is what I wrote on Letterbox. It's one of those classics. It is a classic, but it becomes less impactful slash impressive as time goes by. So the more, I mean, this is a very impactful film, but because it was very impactful, a lot of like other creators have taken what this film did and then just made it better in their own stuff to the point where this feels not as impressive or impactful. The mothership music is it's great. It feels like something out of Fantasia with all the lights. Um, it's a great piece of the history for the genre, but the genre itself has like progressed so far past this first contact that it's it's very simple compared to it, and it's still very good. It's clearly something that's great, but as someone who's a fan of the genre, it's like this is very outdated, unfortunately. But it's still great with its effects and the scale and the grandeur of it that I like. So an updated version would be interesting to see. So I do really like when Spielberg does sci-fi and aliens. So I'm curious to see what Disclosure Day will end up being.
Yeah. Yeah, that this one is sort of spawned out of Spielberg has sort of an obsession with aliens and with alien encounters, and this is sort of his first time exploring that. And this was like, I mean, to follow up Jaws with this like deeply personal, there's a lot of like stuff about his personal life that he even, it sounds like, wasn't aware of when he was writing this.
Mhm.
But that this is like a very personal film. It's dealing with his personal obsessions, and that it was also a massive blockbuster that was beaten only by Star Wars. Like this was the
Yeah.
Star Wars was number one, Close Encounters was number two of the year these came out. Um, yeah, this is like the thing that cements him as a a filmmaker who can just, he they give him however much money he needs to do whatever he wants, because this should have been a massive box office bomb, but instead, no, it resonated with people, became this massive hit. I honestly have to disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I think this has held up very well. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. This is not the movie I expected when I sat down to watch this. The first two acts are very distinct, and they're more so about obsession and sort of also like artistry and like the drive to create and the sort of obsessive drive there. And then the last act, again, you're saying this thing, the contact with the mothership. I mean, this film is what, how many years old now? 50 years old almost. And
Yeah.
Project Hail Mary is referencing the
Mhm.
just the music, and everyone understands what is a reference to.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this sort of testament to the power of art. And then this
Ah.
very odd ending, which I'm not going to spoil for people who haven't seen it, but it is like the a decision that a character makes, which when you take it in context of everything that we now know about Spielberg's personal life and his life growing up, it's like, oh, that's a very interesting final note to end on here. Yeah, I have this in my A tier. You have this in C tier. I'm not even going to try negotiating this. I think this is a coin flip opportunity, unless you want to use one of your wild cards to guarantee this in the C tier spot.
No, no need.
Okay. Well, we are going to flip a coin. Oh, I should have done this before. John, do you want to be heads or tails for
I
this
will.
episode?
I'll be tails.
Okay. So I'm going to flip this, and if it's tails, then this ends up in the C tier. If it's heads, it ends up in the A tier. And it is heads, so this is going in A tier.
All right. Uh, on a side note, do you remember the first time you heard the music notes?
It was probably in that parody John Williams video from when Revenge of the Sith was coming out.
John Williams is the man.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I think I might have heard it. Oh, in the stupid Monsters versus Alien movie when the president playing the keyboard. Uh, also
um,
that video too. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway.
It is like it's everywhere. I couldn't say for sure where I first heard it, but that's just a place that I know that I heard it. That would have been, I was still relatively young then.
Hmm.
But yeah, Spielberg's follow up to this is a very odd film, 1941. This is written by Robert Zemeckis, obviously director, would go on to direct Forrest Gump, among other things, and Bob Gale, also co-writer here, and was released December 14, 1979. This is a comedic take on the World War II incident, the Battle of Los Angeles, where false reports of a Japanese attack led to panic in the city. Now, this is one of the ones that you have not yet seen.
No, it's one that I want to, especially after I think Toshiro Mifune is in the cast list for this one. I
Yes.
think so.
Yes,
That
he is acting alongside Christopher Lee
mm, see that
in
brings
a
it up. I
Spielberg
know it's
film.
not a spectacular film. Uh, yeah, but I'm very curious to see it.
Yeah, this is, I won't belabor it too much. It is worth seeing if you are a Spielberg completionist, but
Hmm.
this is very definitely a D tier film for me. It is just a very unfunny comedy. Spielberg has tried to do comedy a few times, and it tends to not, his films are very funny, but when he's trying to go specifically comedic, it doesn't always work. And I think this is kind of where that reputation starts for him. Um, you have a lot of like zany Looney Tunes antics that don't quite work with the live action style. There's like just something missing there. The cartoonishness doesn't quite make sense. Um, you have this giant ensemble cast and none of the characters are compelling at all. Um, this does though, it is like this big giant spectacle, and like there are some very big sequences, a lot of impressive effects work. So that's kind of for me what's keeping this out of the F category. Um, I think the extended version some people stand up for, though I'm kind of in the camp of like the theatrical cut is hard enough to get through on its own. I can't imagine that, maybe it just kind of starts to wash over you in a way that like becomes a meditation or something. But yeah, for me, this is an easy D tier. So yeah, this was a massive box office bomb, and at this point, because Duel or Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, even though they were massive hits, they both went over budget, over schedule. So Spielberg was starting to get a bit of a reputation of, oh,
Mm.
he's a difficult to work with director. He's like, so for his next film, he wanted to pull back and be like, okay, what's a very an easy to accomplish thing that I can just knock out of the park, deliver it on time, on budget. And so he teamed up with George Lucas for Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is written by Lawrence Kasdan, released June 12, 1981. And yeah, this is the two friends teaming up on a film. They were trying to make an updated version of the classic adventure serials of the early 1900s, but with sort of a, I think the way they referred to it is it's like just the good parts. They're cutting out the boring stuff and just like just the stuff that really works.
Mm.
Yeah, you're up first for your rating here, John.
Yeah, for my rating, this is like for me a quintessential Steven Spielberg film. It is my first S tier film for him. I just I like the genre, I like the adventure. Like when I look into the behind the scenes of like what was done for this, what were they trying to accomplish? It's like, ah yes, it's great. There's a documentary video essay on YouTube by the creator Artur who likes to makes videos about projects and frames it from the perspectives of something. So, with the Raiders from the Indiana Jones films, he frames the perspectives based upon Spielberg's own life and his own personal experience, and so it makes for an interesting story. This is also one that I watched in black and white, and like these are great films to watch in black and white. Like they look great. Like the use of shadows is spectacular. I also just love the Ark of Justice and just how they handle the Ark of the Covenant and just how really well done. And it's like, oh, there's some stuff here that if you know your history, it's like, oh yeah, that's really good at how they did that. So, um, yeah, no, I loved it. I loved it since the Lego game, and I still love these films. This one is probably my favorite one of the series, but it's a great one.
So yeah, did you say your tier or was I not paying close enough attention?
S tier.
S tier. Okay. Yeah. I have this in my A tier, but I'm going to give you the S tier here because of I mean, you gave me Jaws at S tier, and I think this is, cultural importance and everything. This is a great adventure movie that revolutionized the genre. Great action, great humor, funnier than 1941, even though, this isn't supposed to be a straight comedy. It For me, it didn't hit as much on the rewatch when I was, going through the Spielberg films in order. That might have just been, wrong mindset, wrong time or something. So yeah, I don't
Mm.
mind giving this to you up in S tier. But yeah, on that note, next up we have E.T. the Extraterrestrial, written by Melissa Matheson, who was during Raiders of the Lost Ark was dating Harrison Ford, and then began working with Spielberg. This was an idea that Spielberg actually, again, going back to his obsession with aliens and with alien encounters, this was an idea that he had come up with, but wasn't sure how to do. So she took his ideas and turned them into a script. And it was actually the first draft was good enough that they're just like, okay, let's just go ahead and make this. This was released June 11, 1982. Of course, follows a kid who encounters and forms a bond with an alien accidentally left behind by his kind on Earth. And yeah, this is Spielberg's second film to become the highest grossing film of all time. Um, Massive, massive hit. And especially following Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is already like this huge hit. Now Spielberg has four massive blockbusters under his belt. And this basically cements him as the king of Hollywood going forward. And yeah, I have this in my S tier. This is my favorite Spielberg film, sort of tied with Jaws, but I give this one the little boost because it is a little bit more emotionally profound. um the first two-thirds of this have such a light touch that you don't realize how much you have come to care about these characters until the last act sort of brings everything together into this very emotionally resonant climax. John Williams' score, we haven't talked about it much yet. Incredible score, just so deeply emotional. Yeah, it's just the perfect encapsulation of everything that makes Spielberg special, from this his ability to create very emotional and emotionally resonant films.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, all of John Williams' music plays in my head from time to time, this film included. Like, you can't have a Steven Spielberg film without John Williams, and if you do, it's a shame. Um, yeah. No, there are 2 versions of this E.T. film. The original one where E.T., of course, is a puppet, but then in 2002, they made a special edition version where ET was CG animated, so they replaced the puppet with a CG character. That was the version that I grew up with. So
Okay.
I remember ET having much more bodily movement. His eyes were much more cuter. He felt more alive to me because I watched the original version for the first time. I think last year or early this year, and I was like, "Oh, interesting. ET is very stiff," and I was like being so confused. It's like, man, I remember there being more movement here, and so thinking it's like, yeah. I think a perfect version of this film would be combining two stuff because there are moments where the puppet is just so stiff that it's like, is he alive? Is he dead? I don't know. Um, it's a great film. It is a classic Spielberg film. Like I adore it. Obviously, it's used as inspiration for a lot of like 80s stuff. Like we talked about this for like Bumblebee, how it's like, we found an
Yes.
alien and stuff, or the first season of Stranger Things specifically, taken something similar. It's great. It is a classic. Um, I have it on A tier for myself.
Okay. I am going to deploy one of my wild cards to put this in S tier. Again, this is my favorite Spielberg, so I'm going to use that up for this. I feel like this is a worthy cause for me. I
I
don't think I've seen the 2002 edition of this. I think the one that I saw as a kid, and I only saw it once as a kid, but the one that I saw
mm,
was sort of the then, because Spielberg made these changes and then regretted some of the changes. So then there's like a de-specialized edition that then was put out. So that's the one that I'm familiar with. I find it
mm,
just so emotionally engaging. Obviously, yeah,
yeah,
the puppet work has its limitations, but I think it works. For me, it works.
yeah. I think like the stuff for the puppets, like at a distance where he's just standing there. I'm like, okay, you could probably replace that with like the moving model, the CG model, to give it more life there. But yeah, for the most part, up close, the puppet looks great. Um, sure, man, everything's gonna be an S tier by the end of this. I mean, that's yeah. Anyway, he makes good films, so like
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna argue with you, but it's like everything's a S tier. What is a S tier?
I mean, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and ET, like I think those are all
I
deserving of S tier
warranted,
placement.
warranted still, but it's like, oh man, that's why I limited my S tier to like, okay, let me just limit it because there's so many good ones. I have to balance this list
uh,
out.
well, speaking of one of the movies that is certainly on your S tier, next up we have The Twilight Zone, the movie. This is Spielberg flexing his Hollywood muscles now. He is bringing his beloved Twilight Zone, the TV series. He was like, hey, I want to make this as a movie. and yeah, things did not go well. This is written. It's an anthology film, so it's four, I think, five different segments because they count the like beginning and end as a segment. Um,
Mhm.
Different directors coming in, doing their own thing, and Spielberg has one of these segments. But it's written by John Landis, George Clayton Johnson, Richard Matheson, and Melissa Matheson. The different episodes are, some of them are based on episodes of The Twilight Zone, some of them are original. But this was released June 24, 1983. And yeah, the directors this brought together were established directors: Steven Spielberg, obviously, John Landis. This is he yeah, his well, I'll just say it. This had a very troubled production. An actor and two child extras were killed in a helicopter accident while filming John Landis's segment of the film. There was some stuff going on behind the scenes that was, very sketchy. Spielberg was not directly involved in any of that, and actually he changed his segment of the film after that had happened to be something a little less dark. But yeah, then the other two segments are directed by up and comer directors Joe Dante, who would go on to direct Gremlins, and then George Miller, who had done, I believe, the first two Mad Max films at this point. But yeah, all of that preamble. For me, I just ranked this based on the Spielberg segment. John, what did you do for this one?
Well, they don't include this film in the tier list that I made my thing for.
Okay,
Um, so, uh, yeah, I'll give my thoughts just based on the Spielberg one as well. Um, I grew up watching Twilight Zone, so I'd watched the whole series by the time I watched this. I only watched this like the first time a couple years ago, and I didn't particularly love the redone ones because I felt like because they're classic episodes in the show, like
yeah,
spectacular episodes, and the ones that were remade, I just didn't feel like they were done justice. So the original ones I felt to be more compelling, and unfortunately, those are the controversial ones because of the filmmaking ones. Uh, the Spielberg one was just okay. It's very Spielberg and like overly happy, and that's fine. But the entire time I'm watching this segment, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that episode. I like the episode better. I think it's like a C or a D tier for me. I
okay.
think.
I have this. So just for context, the Spielberg segment is called "Kick the Can," and it is about
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of people in this old folks' home who get the opportunity to live one night as young kids again. I have this in F tier. I think this is my only thing that I have in F tier. I think this is Spielberg's sentimentality cranked up to the point it starts to hurt your teeth. There is no, there's nothing else going on here. Usually Spielberg, I mean, his best stuff is combining tension and sentimentality. So you get a balance of those two things. This has no tension at all. It's very sweet, but in a way, again, it just hurts your teeth.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very sweet and it has like the overly happy ending. The episode
yeah.
the original episode, it ends with them as children. And then like the caretaker is like, "Where are all the old people? Where'd they go?" And that's how it ends. That you just hear the children laughing in the distance as they go and play kick the can forever for eternity. So we don't have a lesson to be learned. It's like, oh, we had our youth, now let's die old instead. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
won't
think if we
argue.
if we were evaluating it as a whole, it's probably more C or B territory. I do really like the George Miller and um Joe Dante segments, but yeah, this is just for me. It and I understand because Spielberg obviously was in this horrible position of a film that, even though he wasn't directly involved with the decisions that led to this horrible accident, this is something that, you know, he this was his idea. Um, so obviously he is feeling these emotions and kind of wants something a little bit lighter, something
Mm,
that's. But as you're saying, like the Twilight Zone show has such a distinct tone, and this just does not fit in with that. Um, yeah, I will argue that this is his one F tier movie.
yeah, I mean, I don't have an F tier on my list, so you can do what you want with that.
Okay, do we want to flip a coin about this, or are you okay with me putting this in F tier?
Put it at F tier.
Okay,
there's not a whole lot of films of his that I'd say are not great. I've not seen
Yeah.
them all, so I can't really I can't really
Oh.
put the obvious ones at the bottom because I've not seen all the obvious ones. But yeah,
Uh,
of the Twilight, I think his segment was my least favorite because yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
there's not much going on. But
mm,
yeah, it's follow up to this. Also, at the time, at least, very controversial. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This was written by Willard Huyck and or Huyck. I don't know. I should have looked up pronunciation. And Gloria Katz. This was released May 23rd, 1984, and this is a darker, more violent follow up to the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is actually a prequel, but yeah, it's obviously coming out later, so a bit more of a follow up. Um, yeah, to be honest, I have this in D tier. It starts out very strong, but the scope narrows significantly once the characters arrive in India, and most
mm,
of the second half takes place on these like very impressive but not particularly interesting cave sets. Um, there's also just this is of the Indiana Jones the one that has aged the most awkwardly. There's a lot of racism, some
sure, yeah.
misogyny that's a little bit hard to get over today. I obviously, if you like this film, John, I don't know if we've specifically talked about this, but you're a big fan of Indiana Jones in general, so like yeah, it does a lot well. For me, every time I rewatch it, those elements just kind of rise to the forefront in a way that makes
Yeah,
it tough for me to enjoy.
I mean, compared to the first one and third one, at least, it's not as well polished as those. Um, for me, with the added context of like the young Indiana Jones adventures, like there's more to it
Okay.
there. I think overall, from a lighting standpoint, because a lot of this takes place in a studio environment, it's has like the best lighting of the film. So watching it in black and white was like, oh, every scene is just looks really good. You got your 3 point lighting. It doesn't have like the very specific shadow moments that the first one has, but like from an overall perspective, it's like, oh yep, I like every shot. Looks really, it's all well lit. Um, I enjoy it. I prefer the other ones. I have it listed as a B for me
Okay.
because I,
I
I
have
like
this
Indiana Jones. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I have this at D. Do you want to use a wild card or are we gonna fight this one out?
can we meet in the middle here? Put it like a C
We
or
we can meet in the middle. We can do a C tier.
sure, let's just
I
do
don't
that.
want to. I don't want to put one of your beloved in a C tier without a fight about this. If but if you're okay with putting it in C tier,
I'm okay with
I will.
putting it at C tier.
Okay, I believe that. Yeah, this is our first C tier then. Um,
Oh
I don't feel too bad about this, but obviously you have more fondness for this one than I do. I think this
no,
was
it's just
maybe the
like this.
first Indiana Jones I saw.
Mm, yeah. I've the way we both describe our C tier is very different. I'm sure because there's a
Uh,
lot of my C tier. They're all really good films. That's just yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
stuff that maybe isn't connecting as much for
I mean,
you
stuff that like
specifically.
I don't have a lot to think of off
Yeah.
the top of my head. So like they're there. That's for me. C tier is like middle of the road.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's kind of where mine is maybe like C tier is like stuff that doesn't fully work for me, but I respect, as opposed to D tier is like the stuff that is just there isn't much, and then B tier is more I give it a thumbs up, but I maybe have some issues. Um,
Sure.
but yeah, I mean that's obviously tier lists are a bit subjective, so tried to. But anyway, his follow up to this, his first PG-13 film, not because other of his films wouldn't have deserved a PG-13, but because the rating did not exist. This is The Color Purple, written by Menno Meyjes, based on the novel by Alice Walker. This was released December 18, 1985. Follows a black woman whose abusive father marries her off to an abusive husband. Um, and yeah, this is has an interesting production history. Both Alice Walker and Steven Spielberg himself were skeptical that Spielberg was the right choice for the material, but music producer and producer on the film, Quincy Jones, convinced them both to give it a chance. And yeah, John, where does this rank on your tiers here?
So for me, I have this at D tier, and I will say this: the story is very harrowing. There's a lot. It's a great story, but I agree that Spielberg was not the right choice for this one. Like he's really good as a director, but his directorial charms, specifically at this time of his career, I don't think were really great because they really disrupt what should be harder hitting moments. Because like there's a lot of stuff in this story that are like terrible stuff happens, and yet the way Spielberg filmed it and edited it, it's just felt more whimsical and lighter than what should have been happening. Because stuff is really dark, yeah, it's played for its like, I don't know, it just the context of the story were able to shine, but like there was just a lot of really odd choices. Like there were many scenes where I'm like, hold on, I don't think the tone of this scene should be this light because what's happening is like really dark. So, yeah, I don't think was a good fit for him personally.
Okay. So for context, I actually saw the music the adaptation of the musical before this. So I was already familiar with the story, and the musical has some major issues that then when I was watching the Spielberg version, I had a completely different reaction to. I have this in A tier. So our biggest disagreement yet. The first 40 minutes are some of the most devastating I have ever seen. But then the subsequent 2 hours introduce this sense of hope that for me again I definitely agree that a lot of the scenes are played for the wrong tone, but I still found it deeply emotionally moving. And like the last 20 minutes are just yeah, I was crying. Um the end is just so powerful and moving and important. And yeah, compared to the musical where it's the same story, but then there's a music number that completely shatters the tone every 20 minutes. I found this a much easier experience to sit with. So yeah, that's why I have it in A tier. I think we may need to flip a coin over this one. I'm not gonna put a wild card on it. Are you gonna put a wild card on it?
Uh, let's flip a coin.
Okay. So again, John is tails and I am heads. We're gonna see where this lands. It is tails. John, you get this in D tier.
All right.
Man, I like this one. I think it should be higher, but that's not how the game works. So yeah, as follow up to this one, this is so for a bit of context, Spielberg, when Jaws came out and was this massive hit, and Spielberg really wanted to get a Best Director Oscar nomination. And there's actually a video of him, like he brought a camera crew to his house to film his reaction to his Best Director nomination at the Oscars, and then he didn't get the nomination. And good of him to then still post the reaction on or like for people to see. But this clearly this was something that was very important to him. He didn't get it. The Color Purple was sort of his first film that was kind of chasing that Oscar success, and then he followed that up with Color Purple. I think got 10 nominations and no wins. Sort of a famous one to get blanked. But he followed that up with Empire of the Sun, another sort of Oscar awards bait type film. This is written by Tom Stoppard based on the novel by J.G. Ballard. Was released December 11th, 1987. This is Spielberg's second World War II film, a conflict that he comes back to many times. But this one specifically follows a British kid living in Shanghai during the Japanese invasion. And he's taken to an internment camp, a Japanese internment camp. And yeah, this is, first major role for Christian Bale, obviously becomes a massive star. John, you have not seen this one.
I have not seen this one. No, unfortunately, this is one that
Maybe lower priority than some of the
I,
others.
I mean, if it's available immediately for me, then I'll watch it. I don't know if I'll go out of my way. This is one that I
Yeah.
had no idea was a Spielberg film. I knew this more
Yeah.
as like the Batman.
Oh yeah, Christian Bale. Yeah.
Yeah, Christian Bale film. I knew this for Christian Bale. I didn't know it was Spielberg. And then I know, of course, I knew this first as John Williams. Honestly,
Yes.
I know films by John Williams before I know them by Spielberg. So
uh, yeah, I have this at C tier. This isn't bad by any means. It has some very impressive sequences. Christian Bale is great in it. It does feel like Spielberg hasn't quite reached the point in his career where he can make this kind of film work. Um, there's a bit too much childlike wonder and sense of adventure, which undercuts the bigger tragedy going on here. This is something that, obviously he would eventually grow into as a filmmaker, but he isn't quite there yet. So yeah, I have this in C tier. Hurts me a little to see it above The Color Purple, but them's the breaks.
them's the breaks.
Oh, well, yeah.
Uh,
His follow up to this, um, sort of getting back into the blockbusters, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. This is written by Jeffrey Boehm and released May 24th, 1989. This is lighter and more comedic than Temple of Doom. This film sees Indiana Jones teaming up with his mild mannered father, played by the legendary Sean Connery. A sort of sideways way of, Spielberg obviously very influenced by James Bond. I think at a certain point he even wanted to make a James Bond film. But the producers of James Bond were looking to go in more of a British direction, but here he is. Indiana Jones is sort of his most James Bond character, now teaming up with an actual actor who played James Bond.
mm. I'd argue that Temple of Doom was purposely trying to be more comedic, but didn't quite do it. So you have a total
Okay.
whiplash of like extremely dark imagery, and then just the whatever they were trying to do with Willie and Short Round. This one, I think, is a better mesh of comedy and sincerity. So you have the relationship with the father, which is great stuff. Like Sean Connery, great choice for the father, and of course, I especially like what they'll later do with the TV show. I have this at an A tier. I think was a good cap for the end of the trilogy. I like the story. The Holy Grail was interesting. I specifically like what this does for the character of Indy. Like he has more character work in this one because like you introduce the father, and so you have a relationship to deal with. You get to see his backstory and some of his thought process, and it's like, okay, this did a lot more for the character of Indy than Temple did. So, plus, it's like there's a lot of great and iconic like set pieces and moments, and it's like, yeah, it's great. It's a good one. A tier.
Yeah. I very much agree with the idea of like, yeah, this is giving Indiana Jones a bit more of a character arc here. That is why for me this is my favorite of the Indiana Jones movies. I have this in S tier. I am going to give this to you at A tier just because I had this at S tier because I had Raiders in A tier. I wanted at least one indie in S tier. So now that we have an indie in S tier, I'm fine putting this in A tier. Um, it is my personal favorite, but I understand this isn't the consensus favorite.
I mean, if you want to put it in S tier, you can.
I think putting two indies at S tier is maybe a bit excessive. So I will
I
give this to you in
mean,
A tier.
all right, sure.
uh, but speaking of S tier, next up we have Always,
mm,
probably Spielberg's most forgotten film.
mm.
This is written by Jerry Belson and Diane Thomas. This is a remake of the 1943 film A Guy Named Joe. I have not seen that. Have you seen that one?
No.
Obviously, that one is about fighter pilots, but this one is instead about a firefighter pilot who, after dying in an accident, is sent back as a ghost to mentor a rookie pilot who also falls in love with his former girlfriend. This was released December 22nd, 1989. Um, yeah, I won't belabor it much. I gave this a D rating. John Goodman is this great supporting character. Holly Hunter is great. This has some really good airplane set pieces, as well as like Audrey Hepburn shows up one of her last film roles, and she plays like this very interesting angelic figure. Um, Unfortunately, the lead that they chose for the younger pilot, the rookie pilot, Brad Johnson, just does not have any charisma, and so the central romance and everything just does not work. I found this a little bit boring. I found the comedy not as effective as you would want it to be. Um,
Sure.
Overall, a disappointment, but again, one of Spielberg's least remembered as well, and I think for good reason.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I also have it at D tier. There's ideas and elements that I like, but I don't think the execution was like up to par. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Is this the first time we have agreed on a placement?
maybe.
Well, yeah, that makes it pretty easy. Not much back and forth for a movie that, again, I don't think warrants much back and forth. But speaking
Sure.
of back and forth, next up we have the very contentious movie Hook. This is written by Jim V. Hart and Malia Scotch Marmo, a sequel of sorts to the J.M. Barrie play Peter and Wendy, aka Peter Pan. This is released December 11th, 1991, and it follows the story decades after leaving Neverland to start a family. Peter Pan has forgotten his fantastical adventures and he must relearn who he is in order to save his kids when they are kidnapped by Captain Hook.
Yeah, I I remember seeing this a couple times because it's one of the films that would play on TV from time to time. So that's how I first experienced. It's like, oh, it's on TV. What's all this? Um, I don't have any strong feelings about it personally. I have it at C tier. Um, I think it's all right. It's got good music. I think there's some fun ideas, but nothing that really hits at home for me. So yeah.
This is one of those that, like, when it came out, the critical reception at the time and the reception from adults was absolutely abysmal. One of Spielberg's lowest rated films to this point, generally considered a failure. But then the kids who saw it, sort of the
Hmm.
millennial generation, this is
Yeah.
a massive classic. So it's this very interesting divide that, John, we're a generation removed from that, so maybe don't have the same relationship. I hadn't seen this until last year going through his films. I have this at C tier as well. I find myself in between those who love it and those who hate it. It has a lot of mediocre elements, and you can definitely tell Spielberg wasn't quite sure how to approach the material. Initially, it was supposed to be a musical. I'm kind of bummed that it didn't end up being a musical because that might have improved things a little bit. It's also like 2.5. It's long. It's long.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
that's it. Like, Dustin Hoffman is great. Um, I watched this with my dad, and like, it's hard on some level not to feel a bit of emotional engagement. So this is a story about, fathers and kids. Even though
Yeah.
I get along very well with my dad, I don't have that same kind of contentious relationship. But there is that, there's a little bit of emotional connection there. And when the John Williams score hits and Peter is flying over Neverland, it's just like, oh, this is the magic of movies. Everything else
Yeah.
may not quite be working, but this is Spielberg. He can You're not enjoying a film, and then he just pulls out the sequence, and you're like, "Oh, the power of cinema."
Yeah. The power of John Williams. He can
Yup.
when he gives room to do stuff, he can really elevate something.
Oh, well, yeah. This
Yeah.
goes in our C tier. No contention there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, his follow up to this is Jurassic Park, written by
Mm.
Michael Crichton and David Koepp, based on the novel by Michael Crichton, released June 11, 1993. Absolute breakthrough in terms of digital effects, bringing dinosaurs to the big screen. Um, massive blockbuster. I think this is another one that was, I don't know if it was the highest grossing film of all time, but it was up there. Just this huge hit, has been re-released since then and, grossed over $1 billion. It has spawned this entire franchise that is basically like I maybe this is controversial to say, but I would say there is one good Jurassic Park movie, and they keep making sequels off the strength of that one good Jurassic Park movie.
I would say there's one deserved Jurassic Park movie. The rest are just, what are we doing here? Why we you made your point clear the first time around and now you're just doing it for the dinosaurs. Yeah.
Yep.
No. I I'm pretty sure this is my first Spielberg film, and it's like, yeah, as a kid, I adored it. I
Uh-huh.
adored the trilogy because I was like, dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are so cool. Um, then at some point, you become a teenager and like, haha, maybe this film isn't as good. It's all nostalgia. And then I grew up, and it's like, you know what? Screw you. This film is amazing. It's great.
Yes,
Um,
I have
it's
this at S tier. I think I was supposed to go first on this one.
oh yeah,
Sorry, I meant to, but yeah, no, S tier, so good. Rewatching this, just like really exciting dinosaur thriller with a really compelling sci-fi drama draped over it, with all of these different characters and interesting themes. This sense of both wonder and danger. It is combining two of these things that Spielberg is very good at. And it's weird because this is one that he didn't consider like a passion project the way that he might have with E.T. or with Close Encounters. Um, and that's why he made the sequel, because he doesn't hold this one as sacred as those. But I think this is easily one of his best. Where
yeah.
do you have this one, John?
I mean, I agree. S tier for me. It's one of his best works compared to the other one that came out this year as well. But yeah, no, this is great. As an adult, I love it for its theming and its messaging more than I do its dinosaurs. Like the visuals still really hold up. Um, this is honestly a great triple watch after watching Oppenheimer and Doctor Strangelove. I did a triple feature with these three films, and they're really great films to watch together because of how similar in theming they are. Um, yeah, and like I mentioned before, there's a video essay about this one as well, by Artur, called "The Digital Doomsday of Jurassic Park," which is framing the story of the making of this film through the advancement of visual effects and technology. And it's a great one. It's also what led to what we have today with our visual effects and how it's ruining things. So, um, no, this is his one of his masterpieces.
Yeah.
Um, top two masterpieces for him. Um, because there's another one that's also came out this year that you can debate, and let's get into that debate.
Yeah, yeah. So putting Jurassic Park in S tier. Next up, we have Schindler's List, released the same year, released December 15th, 1993, written by Steven Zalian, based loosely on a historical book by Thomas Keneally. And this is about a German industrialist, the titular Oskar Schindler, who works to save the lives of his Jewish employees during the Holocaust. So Spielberg returning to World War II here, similar ish to Empire of the Sun, though now with many more years of experience and a little bit more maturity. John, where do you have this on your list?
I have this as an S tier. I think this is probably Spielberg's personal masterpiece. It's his deepest film. It's also his saddest film. It's a story of history and the history of terrible things happening to people at a terrible time. It's really hard to sit through, but it's so well done. You feel what the characters are going through. It's it doesn't hide it. It doesn't sugarcoat it. It shows you the brutality and the emotions, and it's so devastating. Um, it's a great story. I think the film is what 3 hours long or close to
It's
3 hours.
yeah, it is a lengthy one.
It's a lengthy one. It is a deserved length because you need everything for the story. It is one I think has told the story the best. There are others that are also contenders as well. But yeah, I think this is Spielberg's most important film right next to Jurassic Park. Interesting that they both came out the same year. Um,
Yeah, massive year for Spielberg with
it's
both his
hard to
like
rewatch as
massive box
well.
office and
It,
yeah,
it's
oh yeah,
very it's
yeah.
very important. It's so hard to rewatch. It's like each year I'm like I should rewatch this in honor, but I'm also like I really don't want to be devastated
No,
right now. So
one thing I will say about this, because I hadn't seen it until last year, despite this massive reputation that it has, and it actually is very watchable. Like it starts out surprisingly entertaining in like an old Hollywood way. Oscar Schindler is like this huckster character, um, snake oil salesman a bit. He's, just trying to make a buck. But then it turns incredibly harrowing, and there's like the specific sequence, the liquidation of the ghetto, where the tone just completely shifts and it's devastating. And building up to this deeply, deeply tragic and moving ending. Yeah, the scene of Schindler breaking down at the end, and I mean, not to spoil it. I mean, this is a historical story, but also a film that is definitely worth seeing. But he is, he has made it through the war. He has brought all of these Jewish people. He has saved them. And he's breaking down and he is doing like this personal inventory of like, oh, if I had sold this car, I could have saved more people. If I had sold my watch, I could have saved more people. And just like, oh, it's so tragic and human, and yeah, it's so good. And then yeah, we cut to the present day with the survivors and the actors visiting his grave, and it's a very lengthy sequence, but it earns that length. Um, yeah, this is an S tier for me as well. No debate there. Just a masterpiece on every level, and this is Spielberg's first adult drama to really work on every level.
Mhm.
He has leveled up as a filmmaker at this point. He is just such a steady hand at this.
Yeah, not to mention it's also a film mostly in black and white, and so
Yes,
there's more weight to a lot of it as well, so yeah.
yeah, and the moments that are in color are very pointedly in
Mm,
color. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, he followed this up with a few years later trying to do a repeat, perhaps less successfully. We'll see where it lands on this tier list. But first up of these two films is The Lost World Jurassic Park. This is written once again by David Koepp, based on the novel by Michael Crichton. Crichton was actually pressured into writing a sequel novel based on the popularity of the film. And then this was that adapted from that, was released May 23rd, 1997. And yeah, it's more Jurassic Park, and I guess I'm up to give the ranking first. This is a D movie for me. You can tell Spielberg's heart wasn't quite in this one. The big set pieces it really comes alive for, but the human drama is just not all that compelling. I will say it has one of the best cuts in cinema history when it cuts from someone about to scream at seeing dinosaurs to Jeff Goldblum yawning. Just incredible. And then the last act of this is fun, and it makes me want to see Spielberg do like a legit kaiju movie.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I grew up with this one. I adore it. Like it's more dinosaurs doing stuff. I love the third act. I love the T Rex in San Diego going amok. His the closest thing we'll get to like a Spielberg kaiju thing.
Well,
Um,
we do also have War of the Worlds, not to spoil anything,
well,
but yeah, that's a little different.
the kaiju, quote unquote. Sure. Um, no, like it's I think it deserves more credit than more people get it. Um, I enjoy it. I think the characterization of Malcolm works for it. Um, I enjoy it more than the sequels after this. It's decent. It's
Okay,
fine.
what tier
Yeah.
do you have this in?
I have this at B tier.
Okay, do you want to use a wild card? You haven't used any yet, so you still have three in your pocket.
Do I want to use a wild card? Um, sure. Why not?
Okay, so John has used his first wild card to ensure that this gets a spot in B tier. Yeah, otherwise I would have made us flip a coin. So I figured you maybe want this a little bit higher than I do.
I mean, just looking at the other stuff that I would argue, it's like, okay, there's others that I think we can agree on more than
Yeah,
this one.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I
yeah,
don't know that you'll have much use for your other wild cards at this point. So
I
we'll
there's
see.
maybe one other. um,
Uh, Well, yeah, his follow up to this was again released the same year, trying to do a repeat of his 1993. Um, I would say less successfully. This is Amistad, written by David Franzoni and released December 10th, 1997. This is inspired by the legal proceedings following a mutiny aboard a Spanish ship, La Amistad, where slaves led a successful mutiny. Um, yeah, this is for me a C tier. It's this very fascinating historical story told in a way that isn't all that interesting. Um, I think Spielberg would do a similar thing a whole lot better with Lincoln, of sort of the legal and that aspect of things. I will say this is a breakout role for Jaimin Hansu. He is really, really good here, and the sequences on the actual ship La Amistad are incredibly harrowing. Those are on the level of Schindler's List. I think the drama around that, the legal drama stuff, just isn't quite there for me. And yeah, John, you have not seen this one.
I have not seen this one. No.
Yeah, this is again. I think there are, if you're going to prioritize Spielberg movies, there is other ones that you can get to before this one. But again, not without its redeeming qualities. Hurts me a little still to see this above The Color Purple, but again, that's the way the cards fell this time.
That's the way the cookie crumbles. Yeah.
Yep. Uh, but yeah, his follow up to this, much more successfully, Saving Private Ryan, written by Robert Rodant, released July 24th, 1998. And it follows a group of soldiers who, after surviving the landings at Normandy, are sent far behind enemy lines to extract Private Ryan, whose three brothers have all been killed. John, what,
Mm.
what do you think of this one?
I think this is one of those go-to war movies, World War II movies. Mainly because like the first 30 minutes, the landing at Normandy Beach, like capture the action and the confusion really well. The people will argue that's the best part of the film, and I think so too. And the rest doesn't quite compare. I think it still works. Um, Obviously, this is a story that's the entire story is not itself based on a true story. It's based on different elements of true stories. Um, One of them being close to home where I currently live, a story called the Bedford Boys, where a whole town of boys were killed, and so that's a harrowing story. Our university wrote an original story on that, and I got to work on that. So I have a personal connection to that and to this as well. This and Bannon Brothers, I think, do a really good job. Bannon Brothers are also Spielberg and Hanks and them did
Yeah.
similar stuff. So I have this at A tier. It's a really solid film. I think it's the first R-rated film that I watched. It was on
Okay.
TV one time, and I was like, "What? TVMA? I've never heard of that." So I watched half of it. I was like, "Oh man, this is gruesome." um, yeah.
uh, Yeah, this is I'm maybe on the outside on this one. I find the D-Day sequence in the final set piece very incredible. This is Spielberg's first, World War II movie that is actually about combat. Um,
Mm,
and it is obviously, again, similar to Aliens. This is a conflict that he comes back to a lot. His father fought in World War II and was apparently very like didn't tell anyone what happened to him there. So Spielberg is very invested in that. Obviously, one of the Godzilla movies apparently has a reference to that. I just recently saw that there's a private Spielberg at some point.
oh, yeah, probably.
I just happened
Yeah.
to see the clip of like they're watching this alien thing land, and the one of the soldiers is like, "You should tell that to your son when you see your son, Spielberg." But anyway, no, that's.
I think I know exactly what film that is.
uh, but anyway, no, yeah, this is like obviously something that's very important to Spielberg in this very interesting story. Um, I found the middle portion a little bit too meandering. I'm not super big on war films. And this is very much a war film. This is like to the extent I think the D-Day sequence especially is just so foundational that every war set piece that comes after this is either directly inspired by this or is specifically trying to not be this. Um but yeah, for me, the rest of it kind of puts this more at a B tier. I'm gonna give this to an A tier though, just for its historical significance and
Sure.
recognizing that I'm very much in the minority in my opinion here.
Sure. Yeah. Even for like its filmmaking importance, I think it deserves a higher spot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, he follows this up with AI, artificial
Mm.
intelligence. This is his second film that he has a writing credit on. Um, based on and a solo writing credit. This is based on a short story by Brian Aldiss, released June 29, 2001. And the backstory behind this: legendary filmmaker Stanley Kubrick had intended to make it, but felt that it would something that Steven Spielberg would be better suited for. Um, and then Stanley Kubrick passes away, and Spielberg then decides that it is time to make this film. It's about a robot boy and his sort of journey through this future society and his relationship to the humans around him. Very, very odd film. But yeah, John, where do you have this on your list?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. Um, it's hard to say. There's many elements that were a little ahead of its time, so audiences probably didn't grasp on it. But also, like, there's a choice made in the third act that really, depending on what you think of it, can like really tank the film or raise it up. Personally, I did not enjoy it as much, so I have it at a C. Like, there's some great VFX. There's also a little bit of aged VFX. Um, I'm curious to see what this would have been like if Kubrick was around to work on it as well. Um, yeah, there's a lot of similar projects that came out at the same time as this one, but yeah, I don't have any strong feelings about it.
Okay. Yeah, what's interesting, because the ending is like brought up as, oh, obviously this is something Spielberg added. I believe that was actually in Kubrick's original idea as well. But
Hmm.
obviously that is like a very contentious ending. Very different readings on it. There's one reading on it that I'm like, oh, that actually makes sense and works a little bit better, but it's not necessarily obvious from the way things are framed. But yeah, I have this in B tier. I love most of it. The world, the characters, the philosophical questions, like all of that stuff. The performances, I really like the performances, even some of the performances other people don't like. Francis O'Connor, who plays the mother figure at the beginning of this, Brendan Gleeson, so much fun. Jude Law is just having a blast here. I,
Hmm.
I love, and then obviously Haley Joel Osment, just such serendipitous casting of like the right kid to play this role comes along at the right time to play this. This is the type of thing that you really needed Haley Joel Osment to be. I can't imagine any other child actor pulling this off. Just the way that he is able, he feels more adult than he is in this performance here, and even in The Sixth Sense, and that sort of uncanny quality is just perfectly suited for this character. um yeah, the ending, I agree, doesn't quite work for me. I understand what it's going for, but it just doesn't quite pull it off. I'm maybe going to suggest we flip a coin for this one, unless you want to use a wild card.
I mean, I can give it to you. You can have it.
Okay, you up in B. Okay, I'll put it up in B.
Yeah. No, there's my C is bloated because like there's so many films where it's like I don't really know where to put this. I'll just put it in C. So
Okay.
you can you could take those films. You can have them.
uh, Well, yeah, next up we have Minority Report, written by Scott
Mhm.
Frank and John Cohen, based on the short story by Philip K. Dick, released June 21st, 2002, and it envisions a future where murders are foreseen by three children with psychic abilities. One of the project's leaders begins to question the system when the children predict that he will murder someone he has never met. Yeah, this is just a really fascinating sci-fi concept, and then you put Spielberg into this. I have this in A tier. I think there's this really, really compelling sci-fi drama, um, with really interesting questions that it brings up, and I love all of the twists and turns. This is Spielberg's weirdest movie, um, gross in
Yeah.
a very fun way. There's a scene where, I mean, hopefully people have seen it. Tom Cruise gets eye replacement surgery, but then he needs his eyeball to get back into the facility. So he has his
Yeah.
eyeballs in a Ziploc bag, and then he drops it and has to chase his eyeball as it's rolling down the street. It's, again, very out of character for Spielberg, but in a very fun way. The visual style isn't my favorite. This is he had been working at this point with Janusz Kaminski for a while. I believe Schindler's List is their first collaboration. This is sort of the most Janusz Kaminski looking film of his. Um, it's very interesting. I don't love it, but certain moments are like very gorgeous. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think this is a tier placement for me.
I mean, visually, this is around the time where Spielberg started to use extremely harsh lighting in the background, which was not my favorite because daytime scenes were pretty overwhelming visually. Um, and he'll keep this for like pretty much ever. They're not
Yeah,
as strong, but you could really tell, like, okay, this is now his style. Um, there's the concept is very interesting, the premise, of course, but it's also like your audience has to ignore some logic and common sense and a suspension of disbelief because of how the system makes sense in its world. It's like, okay, you're gonna have to ignore some things in order to accept the premise, and it's interesting. But like throughout the film, I'm like, in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, logic, logic, logic. I'm like, shut up, logic, you don't belong here right now. It is very interesting. um I don't have any strong feelings, so I have it at C. So do with it what you want.
okay. I might deploy a second wild card here then to secure this in an A slot.
Yeah, I think this is the best one with Tom Cruise. His best one with Tom
Yeah,
Cruise.
I would agree with that. I do. I mean, not to spoil thoughts for later, but I do like War of the Worlds. But
Mm,
yeah, this is just, again, the premise is so fascinating that I really like digging into this one, and one that I had seen before but hadn't seen for many years, and then rewatching it as I'm going through his films, I'm like, oh, this one rules. But speaking of Spielberg films that rule, Catch Me If You Can, released the same year. Spielberg started doing this a lot, of doing two movies in the same year, a blockbuster and then a more sort of drama, prestige type film. This is written by Jeff Nathanson, based on the quote unquote autobiography by Frank Abagnale Jr. and Stan Redding. Obviously, the fun thing about this one is that a lot of what happens here has been discredited. It seems that the character, or the person Frank Abagnale Jr., much as he is depicted here, is very much prone to exaggeration. But yeah, this was released December 25th, 2002. Follows a cat and mouse game between a resourceful young con artist and the FBI agent tasked to bring him in. Where does this land for you, John?
yeah, no, this is a very entertaining film. Very entertaining, very rewatchable. It's so much fun. Williams gets to like have fun with like some jazzy musical
Yeah,
score with this. It's great. You have Leo. I think it's Leo's first time with Spielberg, so it's
yeah,
very,
yeah.
very
First and I believe
entertaining.
only time with Spielberg.
Well, there you go. Um,
Spielberg does not reuse actors all that often. It's really Tom Hanks is the only one who stars in like multiple, and then beyond that he'll only use an actor once or twice. I mean, Harrison
mm,
Ford, I guess, is the other, but that's Indiana Jones. So
sure. Yeah. Yeah. No. Again, this was one that I didn't know was Spielberg until I was like, "Oh, this is Spielberg." Yeah, I have it at B tier. Honestly, it's more of an A tier film if I'm looking back on it. Yeah, no, it's so much fun. I do really enjoy this one.
yeah, I have this at S tier. I'm willing to go to A tier. Meet you in the middle there. This is a
Hmm.
really fun calm artist dramedy, that then also grows into something very emotionally resonant. It feels like Spielberg is finding a personal connection to the material. For people who don't know, Spielberg essentially, as a young man, conned his way onto the, I believe, the Paramount lot, got himself like set himself up in a bed or like empty office, and then that is how he got his start in the film industry. Um, so this idea of like this young con artist and the way he is finding resourceful methods to do all of the things that he's doing, like, yeah, you can tell that Spielberg is connecting a little bit to that, but also the story of divorce, of a child of divorce who is trying to deal with that and the emotions of that. And yeah, Hanks and DiCaprio, as you're saying, so much fun. They're doing great
Hmm.
here. Also, supporting performances, Amy Adams, one of her first breakout films, and then
Yeah.
Christopher Walken showing up with another great supporting performance. Um, and I think this is one where, like, yeah, as I said before, most of the story here has kind of been disproved. This is not as much based on a true story as it purports, but it's like it's even better knowing that because it fits
Sure.
so much with the characters. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I we'll put this in A tier, a compromise between our different rankings of this here.
Yeah.
But yeah, next up we have The Terminal. This is written by Sasha Gervasi and Jeff Nathanson, released June 18, 2004. This is very loosely inspired by a true story, but it is about a man who finds himself trapped in a New York airport after a revolution in his home country invalidates his passport. And yeah, this is one another one of Spielberg's sort of contentious films, one that is among sort of critics and cinephiles tends to be pretty reviled, but you know, when you talk to the average Joe on the street, they tend to be a little bit more fond of this one. I have this in B tier. I understand why people hate this one. It's kind of silly. It's very schmaltzy, weird romance. There's Stanley Tucci, I believe. He plays the villain here and is like the
Yeah.
most unnecessary villain of all.
Yeah.
Like he does not to be need to be here. The ending, I also found the ending to be very bad. I think it should have ended maybe like 10 minutes before it actually ended. Um, but I still found it very compelling on an emotional level. You know, Spielberg doing his human
Mm.
drama thing. Very touching story. I love just the concept of this guy building a life in this airport and building these relationships. Even if I do acknowledge that like not all of it works.
Yeah. No. This is one that we watched a lot as a kid. It was this and Hidalgo that was always like whenever we have like a family movie night, it's like, oh, let's pull a thing off how it was either like the terminal or Hidalgo. Um yeah, no, I like this one. I like the life in the airport. There's lots of fun stuff I think about all the time. I
As
also have
people
a
who have spent a lot of time at airports, that
yes.
stuff is very yeah.
Yes. It's sad watching this and being like, "Oh, man, a Whopper at that cheap a cost? Oh my gosh. You could buy a cheeseburger for 99 cents? What?" Um, yeah,
Oh,
no. I also have this at B tier.
okay.
It's fun,
Yeah.
but there's definitely stuff that's like, "Ah, yeah, I can ignore it."
This one is kind of interesting because they actually built the airport area that
Mm,
he's in for this. I mean, obviously, no airport is going to shut down for that long for production. Um, so yeah, really interesting and like you don't think of this as like one of the best production design movies ever, but the production design is very good at being like, oh yeah, this looks and feels exactly like an airport terminal. Um, but yeah, next up, this was I believe oh no, let me double check this because I think this is another double year. Yes, this is another double up here. War of the Worlds, written by Josh Friedman and David Koepp, based on the novel by H.G. Wells. This was released June 29, 2005. Um, this is Steven Spielberg's second and final collaboration with Tom Cruise. They had a falling out during the publicity cycle of the film due to Cruise's erratic behavior. This is when the
well,
infamous couch jumping scenario happened. Yeah, they had been working very well together up to that point, but then after this, they had a falling out. John, what did you think of War of the Worlds?
this is a film that absolutely traumatized me when I watched it. I I watched it in theaters when I was a kid. Shouldn't have done that because like I had nightmares of the tripods, like the sound they made, like the tentacles that came and get you. It was like, oh no, I'm sleeping in bed. I don't want the tentacle to come and get me. Like this and Mars Attacks are like the films that gave me xenophobia as a kid. So
Not
at least
xenophobia, fear of aliens
yes,
specifically.
yes, extraterrestrial xenophobia. Um, it's a fun genre, but I'm like, yeah, it was very scary in my younger years. So it really it was very harrowing for me to finally rewatch this when I was a teenager. It took a lot of like getting past trauma to do that. Um, but yeah, no, but viewing this as an adaptation of the War of the Worlds, it is decent and very rough. I love the idea of framing this story around a quote unquote regular family trying to survive the invasion. It's great. It's good because it makes it more scary. Um, but then you have the protagonists, which are not the most interesting to watch. You have a little girl that's maybe a little too annoying. Tom Cruise,
I like Dakota Fanning here. I think she's
she's
good.
fine. She's fine too, but she screams a lot. Um, Tom Cruise, great action star. This wasn't the role for him, though. Unfortunately, the ending is very abrupt. Doesn't really have proper foreshadowing that's like satisfying enough, and it really feels like there's like 15 minutes missing from this film. That's like we get from one place to the end very quickly, and I'm like, there should be like 10-15 minutes built into that. Um, which is ultimately pretty lackluster by the end. So yeah, I have this at a C tier.
Okay. I have this in B tier. I think this is just overall very well made, but also again there are sort of things that it fumbles. The third act in general has some good stuff, but is also just it fumbles it a little bit. It is interesting as sort of this post 9/11 disaster movie, and you can tell with the terminal, with War of the Worlds, and then especially with Munich as well. Spielberg is sort of reckoning with 9/11 and the response to it in interesting ways. But this is sort of the on the ground. Again, this is an alien invasion, but has certain connections to that. I like Dakota Fanning in this. I think she is screaming very well.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, overall, I have this in B tier. I don't know if I said that. Are you feeling a wild card for this to keep this in C, or
No, not at
shall we
all.
flip a coin? Okay,
Not at all. You do what you want.
I'm
we
we're gonna flip a coin just because I think that makes it will make for a slightly more interesting than just be this in B tier. So if it is heads, this will be in B tier. If it is tails, this will go into C tier. And it is tails. So John, you get this in C tier.
Okay.
But yeah, next up, Munich, coming out the same year. This is written by Eric Roth and Tony Kushner, his first collaboration with Tony Kushner, based on the book Vengeance by George Jonas. This was released December 23rd, 2005. And this follows after 11 Israeli athletes are killed by Palestinian terrorists during the 1972 Munich Olympics. A secret task force of Mossad agents is assembled to assassinate the men who supposedly organized the attack. But the agents quickly begin to question the morality of their mission and whether the people they are targeting are the people they should be targeting. Um, John, you haven't seen this one, so
No.
I'll be flying solo for the ranking here. I have this in B tier. I was very concerned just based on the overall plot summary when I was sitting down to read or watch this of like, okay, what is this going to be? And I was pleasantly surprised to find that this is much more complicated and thorny than I was fearing it would be. Um, Again, this is a post 9/11 movie, though this one is more focused on the US response and sort of the wars that then spawned, just obviously through this prism of this historical story. And yeah, it's wrestling with the difference between justice and vengeance, and gets to a very interesting place with those themes. I didn't find it super compelling on a scene to scene basis. It has a lot of great set pieces, but just on like a basic story level, I wasn't completely engaged the whole time through. So yeah, that's why I have it ending up in B tier here. But yeah, that leads us then on to Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, written by David Koepp. Been showing up quite a bit in these recent films as a collaborator with Spielberg. Released May 22nd, 2008. This is a legacy sequel that brings sci-fi elements into the Indiana Jones series.
Yes. Um yeah, no, this was my introduction to Indiana Jones, this and the Lego games. Um I remember this film a lot. I remember the trailers for it. I adored it. Like it's so fun and adventurous. I think it's a pretty decent legacy sequel. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. There are some issues. The VFX in the third act are rough. um, yeah. I think visually from a cinematography standpoint, it is like one of my favorites from the Indiana Jones. Like it looks great. Sorry, the first two thirds of this film are very decent, story wise, even visually. It's all really solid. But it once we get into the final act, where most of it's green screen and all that stuff, it's like okay, you start to get to some ugly looking things, but yeah, the opening of the warehouse was just my favorite section to see visually. And I enjoyed the story for the most part. I like that it connected um to the TV show. I think this one also is one of the biggest films in terms of like what it does to Indy's characterization. This and the third one, they do a lot. So we get to see the relationships. We get to see Mutt. Yeah, there's stuff happening here, and I have this at a B tier.
Okay. I have this at D tier. I agree that it starts out strong. I think it gets worse when they enter the quote unquote jungle, aka lots of
Mm.
sets with CG backdrops. I, as someone who has been to the Amazon rainforest, there's just something a little bit disappointing.
I've been to the massive waterfall that they filmed there, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's a connection I have.
uh, I also I don't love that they're breaking aliens into an indie adventure. I know that the series has always had those sort of supernatural elements, but there's just, this one feels a little bit less grounded in history and culture. Um yeah, and that's obviously like one of the big things. The way that Indiana Jones the rights are set up, um it is Spielberg and George Lucas and Harrison Ford all have to sign on whatever idea. And this was George Lucas was like, "Hey, I want aliens," and would not sign on any other ideas. So I understand that, like, it is interesting that like they're going, "Hey, the when we made the other ones, we were harkening back to like 30s adventure series. Let's now harken back to 50s sci-fi stuff." But it doesn't work for me. I also don't love the way it treats the people of the Amazon. They're very
Yeah.
much backgrounded. The culture is just, again, they're fictionalizing it even more so than the other Indiana Jones movies are. Um, so yeah, I have this at D tier. Do you want to use a wild card to put this at B tier, or shall we flip a coin?
Wild card, baby.
John, using your second wild card. I think that makes sense. I kind of figured that might be the case.
Hey, what other film am I gonna use it on?
I mean, Warhorse, obviously.
Oh, sure, Warhorse.
The BFG. You have very strong feelings about the BFG.
Very strong feelings.
uh, but
Uh,
before we get to that, we do have another year of two releases. 2011. These two films were released, I believe, the same weekend. Um,
oh, okay.
yeah, sort of direct competition with each other. Both performed pretty well, but the kind of thing of like, oh, maybe if they had given it a few months in between, they might have both performed a little bit better. But first up of these two, we have The Adventures of Tintin. This is written by Stephen Moffat, Edgar Wright, and Joe Cornish. All people who are like major creators outside of this writing here, based on
Yeah,
the Tintin comics by Hergé. This was released December 21st, 2011. It follows a young reporter and an alcoholic ship captain who embark on a cross-continent adventure to find a hidden treasure. This is actually Hergé, massive popular comic writer, European comics, not as well known in the US, but still very influential. And he, before he passed away, I believe, he saw Indiana Jones and said, "Oh, Steven Spielberg is the only one who should make um, a Tintin adaptation from this point forward." So this had been in the works for many, many years, and Spielberg really wanted to do this. wasn't quite the right time for it, but eventually, I believe Peter Jackson came to him, um, along with Weta Workshop, and we're like, "Hey, here's like a little bit of a test of like, can we do this in motion capture?" And Spielberg was fully on board with it. So they went ahead and yeah, made this. This is a motion capture film, Spielberg's first sort of animated film, mostly animated. Obviously motion
Mhm.
capture there. Um, yeah, this is one that I have a lot of fondness for. This is, I think, the first yeah, this would have been the first Spielberg film that I saw in theaters. Would have been 11 or 12 at the time. And yeah, this is Spielberg finally pulling off the Looney Tunes stuff that he tried and failed to do with 1941. The camera movement and the action sequences, he is being freed by, since this is now digital, he can go completely wild. But because it
Yes.
is digital, it is also like the cartoonishness of it works a little bit better than it did in
Mhm.
1941. We have really fun scene transitions. It's just, it's really well made. And then we also have the story stuff. I really love the characterization of Tintin here. He's such a compelling protagonist. The idea when they made this is that Spielberg would direct the first one and Peter Jackson would direct the second one. That second one has not happened yet. I think sort of post Hobbit, Peter Jackson fell out with the whole Hollywood establishment. But I hope that they come back around to it at some point, because I think this is a really fun film and I would love to see more from this creative pairing.
It's a very underrated one that just goes under the radar. It's like, oh, it's a really good one too. It's so great. It's the best of that motion capture era. Also, kind of at the end of it as well. Um,
Yeah.
it's so gorgeous. Like you have the Spielberg Wonder going to 11, and it's crazy and fun and exciting. Visually, it looks great. It's the perfect capture of the cartoon aesthetic with the motion capture. It's great. It's beautiful. The scene transitions, Jay. The scene transitions are so
Uh,
spectacular. I have this in an A.
yeah, I do as well. I'm glad that we agree on this one. I know this is not, as you're saying, this isn't like super well respected as much as it deserves. Um,
Mm.
I would say, somewhat controversially, this is a better Indiana Jones movie than three of the Indiana Jones movies out of the
Well,
five.
sure.
Obviously, that is not an opinion everyone holds, but also I will say it is kind of funny that, Spielberg got a lot of flack for his ET special edition where he replaced the cops no longer have guns but have walkie talkies, and then he felt bad about that, so he put it back in. And I think as penance for that, 20% of this movie is people shooting at a child. I guess Tintin's like ambiguously, he's a young adult or kid. Um, there are a lot of people shooting guns at him, but yeah, this deserves A tier, I think, and I'm glad you
Mm.
agree.
Yeah.
One I'm curious to see where this will land for you is Warhorse. This is written
Mm.
by Lee Hall and Richard Curtis, based on the novel by Michael Morpurgo and the play by Nick Stafford, released December 25th, 2011. And it is about a horse who experiences all of the horrors of World War One, not World War Two. It is taken by various owners on both sides of the war. Where is this falling for you?
It's hard to say. I don't have very strong emotions or thought about this one. It's like, yep, it's a movie about the horse and the relationship with the boy and him going through stuff. It almost feels by the number in some degree. I think it's fine. I weirdly put it at a D. I think it's more of a C. I think at that point I felt like C was getting too bloated, so I just put it down there. But I think I think C is my actual thoughts on it.
Okay.
So yeah,
I have it at D. The first
okay,
40 minutes of this are boring.
I can see that.
It is just, hey, here's this horse. Let's train this horse. Oh, this horse doesn't want to be trained for 40 minutes. And then the horse goes
Now
to
it's
war.
time for war.
It's fine. uh, there are some good scenes, I think, near the end. There's like a really good sequence of this German soldier and this British soldier sort of meeting in the middle of this battlefield and cutting the horse out of this barbed wire. I thought that was really effective.
Mhm, mhm.
And then the last 20 minutes of this are back to being boring. um I also, this is a weird one. So Spielberg is known for, he rarely, and I believe even never, subtitles his foreign language dialogue. Um, so as a result of that, this movie, all of the foreign language, all of the German and French characters are speaking in English. I actually think this would have been better if the German and French characters were speaking German and French without subtitles,
Mm.
because we're supposed to be seeing this from the perspective of the horse. So that like little bit of disconnect where the audience isn't understanding what the characters are saying, I think that would improve it just a little bit. Obviously also cutting down the first 40 minutes. Yeah. Also, this is the podcast Blank Check did an episode on this that I think is very funny, but my little nod to that is that I will point out that this movie does not pass the sexy lamp test when it comes to the horses. If you replace the horses in this movie with sexy lamps, it is the exact same the exact same story. The horses have no agency, which they're horses, but yeah.
Sure, yeah.
uh so yeah, you had this in C tier, I have this in D tier. Are we gonna flip a coin over this one?
Uh, we can flip a coin.
Okay,
Honestly, like, on my tier, it's at a D, so we can just put it at D.
let's put it at D.
Okay.
Since you initially put it at D tier, I'm gonna say that counts.
Yeah. I remember the marketing for this one, but I just felt no reason to watch it until I watched it. And I watched it not because I wanted to watch Warhorse, but because I was watching a lot of films about horses. So it's like, oh, well, it's Warhorse time.
uh, well, yeah. Speaking of movies about horses, Lincoln.
Lincoln.
This is written by Tony Kushner, coming back after Munich, based on the biography of Abraham Lincoln by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And this was released November 16th, 2012. Follows U.S. President Abraham Lincoln as he attempts to pass the 13th Amendment, officially banning slavery as the Civil War draws to an end. Sort of a very interesting historical perspective on a figure. It's narrowing in on this one specific thing and all of the weird political maneuvering that had to happen in order for this one amendment to pass. What did you think of this one, John?
I think that Daniel Day Lewis was spectacular in this one. His performance as Lincoln was just so charming. Anytime Lincoln is on screen telling a story, you're so captivated. But most of this film is dialogue, and when it's not Lincoln dialogue, it's like, okay, yeah, it's fine. It might be a chore to sit through. But when it's Lincoln, it's like, it's great. But yeah, I don't have any other thoughts besides Lincoln, so I put it at a C.
Okay. Yeah. I I I agree completely. Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln is incredible, and it makes you understand what made Lincoln so compelling. And like, you're watching him talk and you're like, "Oh yeah, I would vote for him. He seems like a nice guy." All of his little anecdotes are just so fun. I agree, it didn't really hit me on an emotional level the same way that some of Spielberg's best films do. I have this at a B tier.
Okay.
Let's flip a coin for this one.
Okay. I mean, I
So
could
if
just give it to you, but
we haven't flipped the coin enough. So if it is heads, this will end in B tier. If it is tails, this will end in C tier. And it is heads.
all right.
So Lincoln ends up in B tier. So yeah, next up, another sort of historical biography here from um Spielberg. I forget which one it is. I think The Terminal is Until Deliverance Day, his most recent film that is actually set in the present day. I guess War of the Worlds kind of counts. But
Kinda, yeah.
20 years of Spielberg doing either historical or sci-fi. I think it's mostly historical or all
Hmm.
historical.
Yeah.
Or I guess, yeah, Ready Player One is sci-fi, future stuff. But yeah, Bridge of Spies, written by Matt Charman and Joel and Ethan Cohen. Um, of the Coen brothers fame. This was released October 16, 2015. It is the true story of a lawyer brought in to negotiate an exchange of important prisoners during the Cold War. What do you think of this one, John?
I think it's a very interesting historical drama based on a period of time that I have no context for because I was never taught this at school. So I don't understand like the deep intricacies of what's going on in this time period, but it was well told enough for me to understand the basic stuff. Um, I thought it was interesting. It could get maybe a little slow in the second half, but it's a historical epic. C tier, I guess.
Okay. Uh, I have this in A tier. This is my favorite of this era of historical dramas from Spielberg. It's tons of fun.
Mm.
Like you have Joel and Ethan Cohen, they have such a distinct sense of comedy, and you bring Spielberg into that dynamic. And Tom Hanks, I mean, he's just such a likable guy, and his character, his moral integrity. Yeah, this is like a funny movie, emotionally resonant in some very surprising ways. Um, it is also very relevant to our time. It is about the importance of due process and the dignity of human life,
Mhm.
and reaching across sort of the political divides to see the other people as people. um yeah, I think this is just a very well made and kind of overlooked in terms of the rest of Spielberg's filmography. um
I mean, it's a
yeah.
really strong filmography, so it's easy to
Yes, yeah.
overlook this one.
Yeah, I think this is A tier, and I think this strongly enough that I'm going to use my last wild card to get this into A tier.
I mean, fine. I've not seen most of the rest of the stuff, so
Yeah, that is part of my calculation here, is that you won't be arguing with me on some of these upcoming ones.
no argument from me.
Yeah, so first up of his post Bridge of Spies work, we have the BFG. This is written by Melissa Matheson, writer of E.T., if you will recall. This is after she had passed away. This was a script that she had left behind, and that Spielberg filmed sort of out of respect for her legacy. And this is based on the book by Roald Dahl, of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory fame. But this was released July 1st, 2016, and it is a film about a giant who lives in giant land who kidnaps a little girl, and they have this sweet little friendship. And yeah, I have this in D tier. When it comes to CG, Spielberg is really good at doing CG elements in a live action shot, and not quite as good at putting live action elements in a CG shot. This movie is mostly live action elements in a CG shot. Um, the CG is impressive, but it looks like mud. All of the CG here looks like mud. It's that sort of ugly 2010s, everything looks like mud. I don't know how to
Yeah,
describe it beyond that. It's very brown. Um, there's some good moments, some good central performances. There's some good chemistry between Mark Rylance and this young girl. Um, yeah, this feels more like a Robert Zemeckis, like Polar Express era Robert Zemeckis movie than a Spielberg movie. Um, it's very juvenile in ways that are sometimes a little bit charming, but mostly I found not that compelling. Yeah, this is a D tier one for me. John, you have not seen this one. I imagine this is not high on your priority list.
I know. I know this film just based upon your reaction to this film. So,
uh, yeah, not one of his better remembered ones either. Um,
mm.
I think it got decent reviews when it came out, but just didn't really have any cultural staying power. But yeah, next up we have a really fascinating one. This is The Post, written by Josh Singer and Liz Hanna, released December 22nd, 2017. This follows Catherine Graham, publisher of the Washington Post, who must decide if their paper will publish the Pentagon Papers, documents that exposing years of government lies about the Vietnam War. Um, this is really interesting because it between when Spielberg signed on and when the film came out, less than a year. I believe he signed on in like March of 2017, filmed it, edited it, released it in December. Um, and that is a testament to Spielberg's strength as a filmmaker. I have this in A tier. This is Spielberg, Hanks, and Meryl Streep. First time working with Meryl Streep. They are at the top of their game. And like they are so good at making movies that they pulled this all together in under a year. This is better than some movies that like entire filmographies of some filmmakers. Um, I do think it might have benefited from a bit more time to iron out the script and whittle down the runtime, but within the context of them making this so quickly, it is very compelling. And it's one of those, it's, you know, this type of journalism drama that like when the paper starts going to print and the John Williams score is going wild, like yeah, you can't help but feel emotions with that. Um, so yeah, I have this in A tier. Yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling conflicted about putting it that high. I'm gonna move this down to B tier. But yeah, very good film.
I can't argue with anything here.
Is this one
It's
that you have prioritized since it has Tom
it's
Hanks in it?
yes, because it has Tom Hanks, it's more of a priority to see. Yeah.
Well, yeah, his next one that he made the post well in post production on Ready Player One. So Ready Player One is his next one, written by Zach Penn and Ernest Cline, based on the book by Ernest Cline. This was released March 29, 2018, and it envisions a dystopian future where people escape the drudgery of their daily lives into a virtual world called the Oasis. Um, Features iconically a ton of references to many major pop culture properties, cameos of various types. I'm kind of surprised that this is one you haven't seen.
Yeah. uh, yeah. Honestly, it's one I probably should have seen by now. Like, I've had so many opportunities to see it, like, it's usually available at some point, but I don't know. I just it doesn't look like something for me outside of like, "Oh, look at all these cameos and such." Besides that, I have no interest in seeing it.
Okay.
Like, visually, it just didn't look good to me. Um, just seeing the visuals themselves, it's like,
uh,
okay."
yeah, I have this in B tier. I feel I have this is an interesting one. On the
Mm.
surface, this is a bad movie with bad performances that is elevated by Spielberg's directing and Alan Silvestri doing his best John Williams. Um, like when the music hits and all of the pop culture characters start running into battle, it's hard not to feel compelled by it. This is Spielberg. This is people working at the top of their game. Um, Again, the performances leave a bit to be desired, but yeah. Um, Under the surface, this is a plea by Steven Spielberg for the next generations who adore his work to do so in moderation and to be careful of corporate interests. This feels like Spielberg wrestling with his legacy and being like, hey, let's have fun with this, but also there needs to be a little bit more critical thought and sort of wrestling with, you know, his legacy being turned into this very corporatized thing. um and like to be fair, like the book includes a lot of direct Spielberg references. The movie kind of pulls back a little bit on that and is more focusing on other pop culture properties. I think Spielberg tried to be a little bit more humble. um yeah, this is one where the first time I watched it, I was just very off put by the grab bag of Easter eggs, and it can definitely feel at times like there's nothing else going on here. On rewatch, I was able to appreciate a little bit more of the thematic stuff going on under the surface, while still being like, yeah, it's kind of ugly, it's kind of bad, but yeah, B tier I think is a fitting place for it. And then, yeah, the last one of these that you haven't seen, West Side Story. This is written by Tony Kushner, based on the musical by Jerome Robbins, Leonard Bernstein, Stephen Sondheim, and Arthur Lawrence. This was released December 10, 2021, a remake of one of Spielberg's favorite films, which sets out to be more culturally conscious of how it handles the story. The original West Side Story obviously featured a lot of brown face and was more so using the characters and their identities as like, hey, let's modernize this rather than actually dealing with the cultural implications of the story it was telling. So Spielberg's version is a bringing that into a more 21st century perspective. Well, also this is Spielberg's first musical. Have you seen any of the musical sequences from this?
Um, I think so.
Okay.
It's
There
been a
is
minute.
the mambo sequence, which takes place in a school gymnasium, is so good. I The clip is on YouTube. I recommend people go out and see it because yeah, this is this iconic musical. But Spielberg's direction just brings so much energy to the whole thing. Spielberg has always been really good at blocking and at movement, and so to see that applied to dance sequences is really fun. Um, and yeah, he is able to, along with Tony Kushner, recontextualize the setting and the characters within their historical context and bring that aspect into it. And you have people, the people playing these roles actually there are closer in their like cultural background to the characters. This is the breakout for Rachel Zegler, who I know the internet hates her, but I think she's a really good, very talented young actress. Just really, really well made. Great young cast. I really like this one. I gave this an A. I Especially on rewatch, this really worked for me, and especially within the context of the rest of Spielberg's films. This is sadder than most of his other films. I think this is his most downer ending of any of his films. I guess I would have to go through each of them. I guess Munich has a bit of a downer ending as well, but yeah, West Side Story, worth watching. Yeah, I said A tier for that one. Okay. So yeah, last up we have his most recent film before Disclosure Day, um, The Fablemans, written by Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner, once again collaborating with Tony Kushner. This was released November 11th, 2022, and it is a semi autobiographical film about a Jewish kid growing up in the 50s and 60s. And in between making movies with friends, he starts to notice the difficulties springing up in his parents' marriage. So, where are you on this one, John?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to say that I need to rewatch this one because I watched it at a point and thought it was okay. Since then, I've like learned more stuff about Spielberg, and since then, I've rewatched his other films and been like, okay, now I can put the context of this film into those. I like that it's not just a Wikipedia page about the life of Spielberg;
Yeah.
that it's a lot more personable of a story than just then he did this, then he did this. So I like the framing of that. It's very interesting. You could see a lot of the inspiration for what would eventually be his works, and you could see more of the context um, of what would later be the emotional core of some stuff. It's been a few years since I saw it, so again, I need to rewatch it. But right now, I just have it at a very unfortunate C.
Okay. I have this at A, and I don't have any wild cards to use on this, so we'll see how this goes. Yeah, this is a fascinating window into Spielberg's upbringing. As you're saying, it really just the way it approaches things, it illuminates a lot of what motivates Spielberg as an artist. And as you're saying, it's more personal than just a straightforward autobiography. I really love the performances here. Paul Dano, incredible. Gabriel LaBelle, though, just an absolute calling card for a young actor to be in the Spielberg movie playing the Spielberg character. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, he's just really good. I love all of the movie making stuff. When we're
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
Spielberg show how he himself um directs things, and like there's moments throughout that just really stick with me. There's one where you know the parents are having this talk with Spielberg's siblings. At this point, or I guess Sam Fableman is the character. Um, So Sam at this point has figured out that, like, oh, his parents' relationship is on the rocks. And they're getting a divorce, and so they sit down to tell his sisters. And he is watching this, but as he is watching it, he is imagining how he himself would direct the scene. It's like, oh, this is how this guy thinks. We're getting a window into how Spielberg sees the world. And it's
Hmm.
like it's very honest and very frank and very interesting. Um, it is perhaps a little bit overindulgent. Like, this is Spielberg making a movie about himself and how he is a great filmmaker. I would say that if anyone has earned the right to be a little overindulgent, it is Spielberg. Um,
Sure.
yeah. I also, the final shot of this is very fun.
Yeah.
The just ending note is very sweet. Um,
Especially after that scene,
yes.
where like being yelled at. It's like, what does this painting look like? This is gorgeous. That's garbage. Learn that and you'll be good, kid.
Yep. Oh, yeah, it is fascinating watching that and then going back through all of Spielberg's other films and seeing the pieces
Hmm.
and identifying all these little things that come through. Um, yeah, it's a really interesting film for a director to have in their filmography, to be like, hey, I have made all of these films throughout the years. Here is like the key that unlocks so many of them. Um, Yeah, so we have a bit of a discrepancy in our ratings here. Are we going to flip a coin? Are you going to deploy your last wild card to keep this at C tier?
Can we meet in the middle and like put it at a B?
Yes, let's meet in the middle and put it at a B. I feel fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't This isn't, my favorite Spielberg. I think it does have its issues. It is very long. So I'm fine putting it at a B.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that is Spielberg. I'll just run through the films here for people who are listening to the audio and not watching the video. So our F tier, we have The Twilight Zone the movie. D tier, we have 1941, The Color Purple. Little sad about that one. Always, War Horse, and the BFG. One of those films is not like the others. Anyway, C tier, we have Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Empire of the Sun, Hook, Amistad, and War of the Worlds. B tier, we have The Sugarland Express, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, AI Artificial Intelligence, The Terminal, Munich, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Lincoln, The Post, Ready Player One, and The Fablemans. A tier, we have Duel, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Saving Private Ryan, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can, The Adventures of Tintin, Bridge of Spies, and West Side Story. And at the top in our S tier, we have Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Jurassic Park, and Schindler's List.
Yeah. All right.
How are you
That.
feeling?
It's almost funny how I have Crystal Skull over Temple of Doom. But hey, that's fine.
That's how the game works, I
That's
guess.
how the game works. Yep. All right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, thank you everyone for joining us for this silly little project.
Silly little project. We'll see if we ever do something like this again one day. You ever do another filmography of someone? Who knows? This was
Yeah,
just
I feel like, yeah, we can come up with someone to do this. Or I was thinking, I mean, I guess we should talk about off mic about this, but I was thinking, oh, it might be fun to do like the Ghibli movies this way.
yeah. We've talked about that before. Like over the years, like
Yeah,
yeah, since I think like 2018, 2019, we've talked about doing this. So
yeah,
who knows? Maybe one day we could do that and other stuff. There are certainly some fun directors to choose from
yeah,
that hopefully we've seen enough of those films. Yeah, no, we'll see.
oh yeah,
I know that you've talked about this one for a while, so I've
yeah.
indulged you and put it on this series. So
Yes, thank you, John, for giving this a home that is maybe a little bit better suited for this than the Binging Barbie Patreon. Which, speaking of
yes,
which, go check out Binging Barbie and go support our Patreon.
yeah. just look at it, at least. Anyway, uh,
Uh,
thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
bye.